Nobody lean forward.
Don't leave.
So, well, welcome everyone, and welcome to our Future of Procurement Talent, upskilling the era of AI and automation. You know, yesterday I was on the main stage, focused on the panel that was, you know, it was just all about re-engineering the procurement playbook, and there was a couple of things that we talked about as enablers to doing that, and one of them was talent. So we didn't have a lot of opportunity yesterday to go into detail, but today we do. And we're going to go deeper into the human resource aspect of this whole AI revolution, evolution, et cetera, what we're talking about today. So joining me on stage are three wonderful panelists, and I'm going to introduce each of them. So Jeanne Meister, the founder of Future Workplace, to my right.
Yes.
She's an internationally recognized HR consultant, the author of 3 books on the future of work, as well as the founder of Future Workplace, an HR peer network.
Yes.
We also have Rosalia Snyder, all the way on the end, who's the director of Source to Pay at Microsoft. And Rosalia leads strategy and digital transformation at Microsoft Procurement, which also includes prioritizing AI-driven tech investments, as well as making decisions around whether you build or you buy. Yep. And also, we have Bawana. And Bawana, I've known you for a long time, but I'm not even going to try your last name. Former SVP, Senior Vice President of Supply Chain Digital Transformation at Colgate-Palmolive, 25 plus years as a global CPG leader, procurement, digital supply chain across many global markets. What I thought was most interesting, you've been recognized as one of the top 100 women in supply chain. Congratulations. So let's get right into it. And what I want to do is look out 5 years. And as we look at that, you know, one of the things that I want to think about and have you share some perspectives on is, what is the day in a life of a procurement professional 5 years from now? Because I'm a firm believer, if we don't understand that, how can we talk about the skills, the talent, the knowledge that those individuals need to have? So we have to understand, what are we going to be doing? What does that look like? And I know 5 years is out pretty far, and if we have to only go out 3, that's fine. So Rosalia, I want to start with you.
Yeah, we had a lot of talk about this yesterday, where instead of focusing on more like manual tasks, tactical work, we're actually going to start shifting to managing agents. And what does that look like to manage agents in a network of agents that are interacting with each other to really get those business outcomes? And so our whole roles, our day-to-day industries, everything's really just going to transform.
So really a blending environment, which we've been talking about, the agentic AI, the agents, et cetera. What about you, Bawana?
So I'm not sure if my view is more crystal ball or a wish list, but I think of it, and I don't know if 5 years is even the right time frame, but I think of it as in the future. Even if I look, walk through the floor here, we're all very much still talking about the P2P process. We talk about procurement, we're talking about the process. We're talking about how to make the process more efficient. I think what AI enables is us to get beyond the process. So the future of procurement, the way I see it is, we're not going to be talking about the procure to pay process, how to get a supplier onboarded, how to pay an invoice, how to make sure that the compliance is right. AI is going to do all of that for us.
Yeah.
So what's left then is the real procurement job, which I think is the utopia of what all of us in procurement have always wanted to do, which is the real value addition. Going after how do we maximize those value deals with suppliers? How do we look at supplier negotiation in ecosystems and not a one-to-one supplier relationship? So all these things that we've been talking about for decades.
And haven't had any ability to do.
Will actually make that happen for us. So I see that as the future role of procurement.
Okay. And Jeanne, you offer a different perspective. We have 2 procurement practitioners with a lot of expertise in this field. You're not necessarily from the procurement side, but what, from your research, as you look out at professionals in this environment, what do you see that day in the life being like?
Yeah, well, my background is working with chief human resource officers. And what I'm seeing is the human side of AI. As more workers use AI, usage goes up, and so does anxiety. So the chief procurement officer, a couple years from now, I think is going to be dealing with managing a hybrid workforce, as we've seen, humans
the
and
agent,
AI,
what
right?
Rosalia said.
But also dealing with the anxieties and the concerns around with work that workers have. Am I using it in the right way? What's the impact on my career progression? And how do I deal with the job change?
Yeah. So we have a picture. You both, or all three of you, have painted this picture of what that future professional is. And what I think now is I want to highlight is if that's what we're going to be doing, what are the skills, the knowledge that we need to have to participate effectively in that kind of environment? And Bob, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think for me, the news is, it's bad news. The procurement job is going to get tougher. We're going to have to be those business owners, those strategic business value creators. And that's not an easy role to define, let alone upskill for, right? So
the role is going to be more difficult to
it's
define.
going to be much more difficult
Okay.
to do because you're not now administering anything. I mean, all of the things that you spend 80% of your time now, which you hate to do, it's still 80% of what you do. All of that's going to go away.
Yeah.
We have to get really good at that other 20% and upskill what that means for us. So if you think about negotiations, Pactum and Barreau and all of them are going to do all of your base negotiations. What you
Okay,
have to
so
do is
that's off
find
the
that,
table.
find that next bigger pie, and how do you expand that pie for your supply base and not for that one supplier, right?
Yeah.
How do you upskill for that? I think Eloise was talking about it yesterday. We have to throw away all of the books we have on our procurement training. It's all going to change.
Yeah.
So to me, it's exciting, but it's also scary. Because it just means that our jobs are going to get that much tougher. We're going to have to be that much more advanced in the way we think about business value, business impact, and then how we bring that in our field.
Yeah, so our thinking, and I would say, I think what you're suggesting is that we're going to have to certainly be exercising that more strategic side of what we do going forward. Rosalia.
Strategic and creative, I would say. I mean, industries are changing, roles are changing. Like I said, the way that we work is going to change. And so I think as leaders, we really need to understand AI, the capabilities, the limitations of it, what business challenges can it solve, and how do we deploy those quickly in the most strategic, creative ways that are bringing more value to the future of our organizations and doing it in an innovative way.
Okay. Jeanne, your thoughts?
So I think that the CPO is a tough job. And I think there's going to be greater workloads, leaner staffs, and more of a commitment to think about AI implementation as less of a technical challenge and more of a human challenge. And diving into and balancing investments with upskilling human skills, collaboration, critical thinking, strategic planning. And these are the skills that I see HR leaders doubling down on.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't hear any of you highlight, well, experience. How important is experience going to be for those individuals participating, say, 5 years from now? You mentioned a lot of other types of skills, business acumen, some of the, I'll say, softer types of skills, relationships maybe become more important. But what about what I just mentioned?
So I think we all in this room have to consider that learning and working is, the boundaries are dead. Learning is working, working is learning. So we've been talking in HR a lot about being continuous learners. That's what you're going to have to be, especially given the obsolescence of skills.
Yeah.
So the skills you may have had in your previous role or learned in college, you're going to have to double down and learn new ones.
Yeah, yeah. And in some ways, it might come with experience, with some of the folks, because some of the things you're highlighting are skills that are relationship-based, et cetera. And sometimes those become more important and maybe a bigger part of our job as we further get, I'll just say, elevated in our careers. So let me switch the gears a little bit. And what I want to do is highlight a little bit around the organizational structure. We're talking about the skills. We're talking about what that person and how they'll interact in this environment, but are there going to have to be structural changes in the organization as well? And it's not about the skills, it's about the talent. An example is today, we make decisions in terms of where to place labor around the world for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's for cost, sometimes it's for competency, et cetera. How is that going to change 5 years from now? Is that still something that we're going to be looking at, or is it irrelevant at that point?
I think it's definitely going to change. I think in general, organizations are going to flatten. I think as AI comes into place, we have accelerated analytics, decision making, the role of a manager, I think can flatten within an organization. I think there's the mix, a little bit of what I heard yesterday in the ratio of what does that look like, how many humans, how many agents, where are they located? I think the location of physical teams is probably going to become less relevant as we shift more towards that hybrid role.
Okay. Bhavna?
Yeah, so a lot of it, I think, very similar to what Rosalia just mentioned, but I think the geographic location, I don't think that's fundamentally going to change, because we're still going to have that customer, consumer distance that we want to either keep or not have, right? That's not going to change, because at the end of the day, we're still in the business of working with human beings, right?
Yeah.
And for human beings. So yes, I may have a COE that's primarily centralized,
Yeah.
but I'm still going to have my end customer that's going to be local. For a large global company like we are from,
Yeah.
we're always going to need to be close to our customers. So this notion of can we, if we go all agentic, can we then shrink all of this into one center and do procurement remotely from a dark room somewhere? I don't see that. It's not how we talk about the sales organization. I don't see why it would be any different in the procurement organization, because supply base is going to be as fragmented as our business is. Right?
Yeah.
And our business is global. So we have to be where our customer is, and we have to be where our supplier is.
Yeah.
So I don't think that is fundamentally going to change, but I think I agree with Rosalia in terms of the ratio of where we have our center of gravity teams versus our satellite teams. I think that's going to significantly change, right?
Well, it sounds like you're saying, it just becomes more democratized when you start thinking about geography. It really doesn't matter anymore. I mean, the environment that we're moving into, and you said, what are the things that are going to be important? What's the day in a life? What are the things that are going to be important? We know relationships, et cetera. And you're not going to get that if you're sitting, 300 miles away or 1,000 miles away. You're going to have to be closer to the customer. And this is something that we've been talking about in procurement for a long time. Jeanne, what are your perspectives on that?
Well, I'm actually seeing in my world the organizational lines shifting. So traditionally, the head of HR would just deal with HR and people issues. I've seen a number of organizations now integrate IT into HR.
Yeah.
Because that's where the spend is, that's where the growth is. So you're left wondering, what will the organizations look like, regardless of geography, a couple of years from now, as some of these functions merge together?
Yeah, yeah. Let's pivot again. And what I want to talk about now is generational differences. When I was on the panel yesterday, Eloise was up there and she was talking about some of the generational differences, talking about dinosaurs like myself and versus people, early on coming in. And I know, Jeanne, some of the research you've done is to talk about that. And I think we have to consider that as we're shaping this future. are there certain generations that will participate more effectively, in that kind of environment that's being unfolded in front of us?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gen Z these are folks anywhere between 13 and 30 years old.
Okay.
Right? They're about 20% of the workforce now, close to 30% by 2030. I just finished some research and segmented findings by generation and found that the Generation Z actually has the greatest anxiety and fears about the use of AI. Now, that's a little counterintuitive because you think, well, they're so they're tech literate and AI literate, but no, they're thinking 30 years from now.
Yeah.
And they're saying, what's the impact of all of this on my career progression? Am I going to lose out on a promotion if I can't prove that I'm AI proficient?
Yeah.
And they're reading the media. Companies like Duolingo and Shopify are now saying, your ability to use AI to solve a range of business problems is now going to be included in your performance review.
Yeah.
And you'll be considered for promotions because of how proficient you are. So I see the youngest generation being the most concerned, and some are opting out of corporate jobs entirely.
Well, I'm going to ask you about it. If they're opting out of the corporate jobs, what are they doing?
Skilled labor.
Skilled labor, really?
Starting their own businesses, being a digital content creator, being an app developer.
Gig workers.
They're gig workers. They're really focused on flexibility and creating their own work-life balance. So it's going to be interesting with that generation as they mature 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Bhavna, as you look at it from that corporation and understanding what Jeanne is saying, what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny because on the one hand, it is counterintuitive because I would have expected the opposite, actually. But I think it also gives me hope because if this generation is thinking about it today, and they have 30 years of runway to do something about it, because they're going to be the generation that has the most impact on what the future of AI is going to be. Because these are the gig community that's going to go and feed the AI of the future, which means a lot of the concerns that we have today on the ethical use of AI and the bias that is within our current AI, all of that kind of starts balancing out because this generation is so keyed into that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe glass half empty, glass half full, but that gives me hope that this generation will actually do something about making that future AI component well within a part of the ecosystem that they live in, but more palatable to what the life is that they want to lead 30 years from now, right?
Yeah. Rosalia.
Yeah, I think the younger generation, they're tech savvy, they adapt, they are willing to learn. I look at even my kids play on my phone, they're playing with Copilot and trying to find ways that they can create things and have it help with their homework. And those are things that I never had, right? And so they're just growing up with all of this. And I think there's just so much potential. And I think there's also, though, experience and I would say the more experienced generation, I won't say older, just brings a lot more leadership, strategic thinking, and decision making. And so I think it's important to make sure that we are bringing all of our unique perspectives and not just kind of going in with a bias on a generation and what they bring and what potentially limitations they have.
Yeah. I want to ask a question. There's a quote that a lot of people highlight, and it's, they say that it's not AI that's going to replace you. It's the individual that knows how to use AI that will replace you. And I know, Jeanne, you were just highlighting that is, as a possibility. What are your I know what you're thinking, but Rosalie, I'm going to go back to you. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's not just specific to AI. I think change is a constant.
Yeah.
There are people who are change agents and who lean into it and embrace it and grow with it. And then there are others who maybe it takes a little bit longer for them to get on board. But I think the reality is just whether it's AI or not, you've got to learn how to change. And the people who can embrace that change and to show up with curiosity are the ones who get further.
Yeah, so it's not just the AI, it's just that ability to change. And probably in the environment today, it's just much more rapid in the velocity.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
cadence
Absolutely.
changed. Bhavna.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't think of it in terms of replacement. I think that's a very single-minded view of, oh, something is going to come and displace something else.
Yeah.
I believe AI is going to reinvent us. It's going to reinvent us.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, whether we come kicking and screaming or we lean into it. So yes, change. It's going to come, but I don't see it as a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
One in, one out. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah. And it wasn't one of the skills that I heard you highlight earlier, but I'm going to say what you just validated is another critical skill as we look forward is the ability, people use the term change management, but to change on top of some of the other things that you have highlighted. What's interesting is you talk about these skills and saying, how do I participate effectively and productively in that environment that is, that's being shaped. And I know I was joking when we were coming up. I said, I'm going to ask you, what do we think 5 years out? And that's probably too far. I mean, that's, it's like fuzzy visioning, right? I mean, do we really know, 5 years? I don't know. But, 3 years may be a little bit. So I think that time frame in terms of thinking out is shrinking as well. I want to end with one thing. And, as we look going forward, there's a lot of folks here. And, what's a piece of advice that you would give to the folks out here? And I would say it's something as they think about how do they plan for the future of procurement talent. And not just for themselves, but for their organization. And pick one of those. So Rosalia, what's a piece of advice that as they think out, what do they need to be doing today? What's an advice that you would give them?
I would say build cultures of psychological safety and just be really good coaches and leaders. And what I mean by that is AI is changing by the day, and we know that we all want to harness the opportunities of that future in an agentic world. We're not going to get there overnight, and we're not going to get it done right the first time. And so I think we have to create this space where our teams feel empowered to experiment, to iterate, and we've got to coach them through those setbacks so that we can keep them motivated towards those outcomes. So I think it's really just embrace the journey because it's going to take a lot of iteration to get there.
Yeah, eliminating that fear of failure.
Yes.
As we were talking earlier as well, success is based on the back of a lot of failures.
Yes.
Maybe not a lot, but failure. Bhavna.
I love that. I love the idea of psychological safety and experimentation and what that means for us in an environment. I think the other thing I would add is critical thinking.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be so key because in an environment where technology can do so much of the base thinking, so much of the problem solving, so much of the proactive process solving, the human element is going to be based in critical thinking. So that's what we all really need to practice, learn, upskill, and train the next generation, which is where, going back to your earlier question, that's where the experience comes in, right? So how do you tie that experience and bring the whole multi-generational resources to bear to kind of keep that creative, critical thinking aspect alive? That would be one.
Okay. Jeanne.
I think we should all become serial learners.
Serial learners, okay.
Just like entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. What's the one trait that they possess to make them successful? They're always able to pivot and pivot successfully. So for us, we have to be serial learners and going and learning the next new thing, whatever that may be, and we don't know right now.
Yeah, I think you've all just basically shaped what that future professional is going to be. One that doesn't fear failure, one that is critical thinker, and one is a serial learner. Thank you. Thank you for all your contributions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.